Hi, my name is Jared, and this is Horror Obsession. Today, I want to talk about the first two episodes of The Last of Us, an HBO show based on a popular video game which I've never played. I want to get that out of the way to make it clear I am evaluating the show based on the show only. I have no idea what happens in the video game or if they changed anything or whatever. I am going to spoil the first two episodes, so if you haven't seen them yet, I would recommend you give the show a chance. The visuals are great, the characters are pretty good, the premise is really fun, and while it isn't the scariest show I've ever seen, it definitely has its moments and I have enjoyed my time watching it so far. With that out of the way, let's jump into the spoilery stuff. The premise of The Last of Us is due to global warming, a fungus has evolved to be able to infect humans. Much like the fungus that infects ants and mind controls them to make them walk up branches and things, this fungus is capable of controlling humans and making them do stuff. Like I said, the show is a great premise. The zombie genre is a bit played out after like 100 years of The Walking Dead, and this is a very fresh, original take on the genre which adds a lot of intrigue. There is an alien-like quality to the fungus, and the characters of the show have to try to survive and operate under limited information since the colonies or cultures, groups, whatever, the big collection of fungus has a sort of hive mind and is able to communicate across large distances due to underground routes. This means each zombie serves as a sort of proximity alarm, and swarms of these things can be on you in a flash, which definitely adds to the suspense and tension. Another major benefit of the premise over the traditional zombie approach is the visuals. HBO doesn't hold back here at all, and there are amazing establishing shots of ruined buildings, which coupled with the really cool zombie creature design creates a unique aesthetic. I assume much of the visuals are lifted straight from the video game, and if so, great choice, because everything looks really good in the show. Even the more muted stuff is excellent, and the post-apocalyptic Boston the characters start off in has a lot of detail that makes the whole world feel real and lived in. This is essential with such an ambitious premise, since without the world building, costumes, and set design, the entire production might come off too sci-fi channel-y. Have no fear, dear viewer, because HBO elevates the material way above something like that. To continue with what works, Pedro Pascal is amazing as Joel. His performance is really great, and he convincingly moves across a wide range of emotions, from the annoyance he feels interacting with Ellie, to the reserved anger at finding out people hurt Tess, to the absolute sorrow he feels after the death of his daughter. Nico Parker nails her minor role as Sarah, and while she doesn't make it past the first 10 minutes, she really makes the most of her time and hopefully she gets more roles in the future because I really enjoyed her performance. Anna Torv, who also played Dr. Carr in Mindhunters, gives a very subtle, nuanced interpretation of Tess, and it works wonderfully. She interacts with Joel in a way that implies a history, but is left intentionally vague, though it seems clear they have had a romantic relationship for some time. The only person I'm undecided on is Bella Ramsey as Ellie. I want to split this up into two parts, the acting and the character. Once again, I have no idea how the video game portrays Ellie, but in the show, she is sarcastic and sardonic, and it's kind of abrasive. I think this is supposed to be endearing, as we cheer along at how she has survived the trauma of growing up in a fungus zombie society, but still has a sense of humor. But the jokes and quips are pretty out of place at times. For example, when Tess and Joel are talking about her in the building, they are trying to decide whether they should kill her and continue on their journey to find a car battery alone. Ellie is making these weird jokes the whole time, and I couldn't help but think, why is she doing this? We know Joel and Tess aren't the bad guys because we have seen the rest of the show, but she hasn't, so how does she know they aren't horrible people who are actually going to murder her? I think the show is going for Ellie being kind of naive and lacking the life experience to be afraid of the situation, but first of all, she is under 20, so she spent her entire life in this post-apocalyptic nightmare world. You would think she has experienced some pretty fucked up stuff, and she even mentions she is an orphan. She also mentions she snuck off and got bit by a fungus zombie, a major plot point they emphasize a couple times because she's actually immune to the infection. She wouldn't have known she was immune to the infection until well after she was bitten. I mean, how could she have possibly known? So weird to believe this orphan girl, who either watched her parents die or grew up almost entirely among strangers, had to come to terms with her own slow, painful, fungal-infected death after being bit, only to later discover she is actually immune. And after this extremely difficult, traumatic life she has lived, she is captured and kept chained up to a wall for 3 weeks, and her captors give her to two violent strangers, one of which she just watched beat a man to death with his fist the night before, and her response to all this is to make jokes? Ellie is clearly making jokes for the audience's sake, since the writers want to endear the audience to her quickly. I can get that, but it felt so off to me. It would be one thing if they showed her using the humor as a defense mechanism against the horrible and repeated trauma she has experienced in her life. But there is no indication of this, and we never see her with her supposed shield down. She is just like this. To make matters worse, she goes to a hotel and starts ringing one of those bell things while Joel, Tess, and her are trying to sneak through a building.
Ding ding! Yes, sir, I would like your finest suite, please. Yes, ma'am. Would you like me to take your luggage? Yes, ma'am. Right away, ma'am.
You're a weird kid.
You're a weird kid.
This scene would make sense if she was like 7, but she is way too old to not even have a basic comprehension of danger. They even talk about it and emphasize it right outside the door like a second earlier. I don't know how she would even know to make a joke about this, since she grew up in Fungus World, so presumably hotels don't exist anymore, but whatever, I can let that go, I guess. In terms of the performance, Bella Ramsey is okay. She is the weakest of the big three, and I have a hard time separating out her performance from the very uneven writing of her character. Her acting comes off as kind of flat at times, and it seems like she has trouble emoting on occasion. It is possible this is on purpose, and she cleans it up in future episodes, so I'm waiting for a final verdict, but I haven't been incredibly impressed by her so far. Based on the trailer and some of the end of episode footage, she does come around as being much more serious, and I think her style of acting will lend itself to that kind of performance much better than the sarcastic, carefree teen stuff does. Overall, The Last of Us is a really good show. HBO absolutely nailed the set design, the monster design, the world building. Everything is shot super well, the lighting is great, and the performances are all spot on, with the exception of Ellie, who I think suffers a bit from weak writing, though I suspect this is from the game itself. I assume she is the main character you play as, and while it is less realistic than a traumatized, unstable teen, the quippy teenager is more relatable, and the creators of the character likely assessed the audience would identify more with her written this way. So I understand the choice. I just don't like it very much, and think it could have used some work. Let's hope it gets better as the show goes along, because fixing this one issue would elevate the show to all-time great status, even for someone with a dreadful horror obsession.